Here is everything that I'm going to need to test some of the weirdest garage hacks I could find on my own motorcycle.
I spend more time scrolling stupid videos of bikes on TikTok, Instagram and YouTube than I do actually riding my bike, which means you inevitably come across some ridiculous tips, tricks and hacks to make a difficult task easier.
At least in theory. So I've put together a list of 10 that seem too good to be true, because if they really can save me time and effort in the garage, I might actually have more time and energy to ride my bike. And then I'm going to give them a score out of 10 so that you know if you should try them as well or not.
Get up to 20% off CHIGEE smart motorcycle dashes by using my discount codes in the description.
But don't worry, that is not the first hack. The first one is some guy that has a way to polish your headers without taking them off of the bike, supposedly. Now, the headers on my Speed Triple aren't actually that bad, but that's only because this is a 2023 model. It's not that old.
But in the last 18 months, I've polished the headers on 3 different bikes, and I always removed them completely to get into all the hard to reach places.
But I was already working on those bikes. I was already stripping them, so it was easy. Take this bike for example. If you wanted to take the headers off, you would need to remove the radiator just to access the header bolts, which means you would have to drain the cooling system. And the radiator cap on this bike is actually underneath the airbox. So you would have to strip a lot of this bike just to get the headers off. So if a silly shoelace could do the trick with the headers still on the bike, I think it could be a good hack. Okay, at first I was a little bit skeptical, but seeing the sort of abrasive texture on a shoelace, I think this could potentially work. I am just like Valentino Rossi now, because I have surgical gloves, which makes me the doctor too. Okay, let's start with one header, the easiest one to get to, see if we can make it look any better, and if it works, we'll call it a successful hack. So let's cover this header in some metal polish. I'm only going to do a section, which might make the rest of the headers look terrible. I also might get quite a bit of metal polish in my radiator fins, but we got a hack for that later. Now it's time to learn to tie our shoelaces. Let's start at the bottom here and work our way up, shall we? And then he sort of just went back and forth like this, a very strange motion. I feel like I'm playing a child's game in the playground.
But then the hiccup started. First it got tangled. It also didn't look as effective as in the video.
I'm honestly not sure if it's fun or mind-numbing.
Then I had to skip a section because the adjoining pipes were in the way. Then it got snagged on a weld.
Oh, now the header changes shape and it's just getting snagged on everything. Okay, I know I'm making this look like I'm incompetent, but I promise you it's more tricky than it looks.
After one final attempt on the only easy section, I cleaned off the remaining polish, and here is a before and after. It is a tad shinier, but I don't think it's necessarily easier.
So after all of that, this header looks pretty much exactly the same. Maybe a little dirtier because now there's metal polish stuck in all the welds and crevices and this big dent that we won't talk about. But it's probably a good thing because now I don't have to polish the other 2 headers because this one doesn't stand out. It doesn't look any different. If you have perfectly round headers with no welds or connecting pipes, and perhaps they come out the side of the bike where they're easy to access, a shoelace is probably better than nothing and a pretty easy way to polish them mildly. But compared to taking them off and doing it with steel wool by hand, this makes 0 difference. 5 out of 10. Technically, all you need to siphon fuel out of a fuel tank is a hose of sorts and a container to put it into. Here is the authentic way to siphon fuel out of a tank. First, you put one end of the hose in the tank, all the way to the bottom preferably. And now we're going to suck on this end until the fuel gets over the highest point in the hose. And after that, it should continue to flow all by itself.
This could be a handy skill to have if you or a friend ever runs out of fuel.
I guess it would help to get rid of the kink. It was working though.
But this method has one drawback that my dad accidentally taught me as a child.
There's my kink again, but it's working. It is slow due to all the kinks in my hose, but you can see it's working. We are siphoning fuel out of my tank, essentially robbing myself. But I do remember watching my dad siphon fuel out of his tank multiple times as a kid, and for some reason he would always end up with fuel in his mouth, and then I would bring him mouthwash afterwards so that it would taste better. But apparently all this time there was an easier way. I think I've got everything I need. The only problem I think I'm gonna have is that my hose is too long. Not a problem I've ever had before. So let's feed it in and see where we should cut it. That's the bottom of the tank. How much do we want? Like that much? So now he just fed it into the bottle, created a seal around the top with his rubber glove, and then just squeezed the bottle to create the suction to get the fuel out. Oh, it wanted to. Let the air out first, as much as possible. Seal the top and let go. Oh, I keep lifting it too high. Seal the top, bring it down low, and release. Haha! It's working.
Except in my excitement, I almost overflowed the bottle and got fuel everywhere.
There we go. That almost ended badly. But that would be a super convenient way to transfer from one bike to the other. Of course, there's some Coca-Cola in the fuel now, but that just adds more horsepower. In a past video like this, I tested a way to do exactly this, but instead of using a bottle, I used an air compressor to pressurize the tank. It's a lot easier to take a little plastic bottle with you than an entire air compressor, so 10 out of 10. It works. If your bike is a bit older, or perhaps it's lived a hard life or slept outside a lot at night, you might have bolts on it that look like this. What I usually do when it's bugging me, but I'm also kind of lazy and in a rush, is take a Brillo pad or a Scotch-Brite pad, take some pliers and grip the threads of the bolt with your pliers, use a bit of degreaser or a cleaner of sorts on the Brillo pad, and just rub it up and down like this, and it will get clean. And then once you've dried it off, it looks a lot better. It's not brand new, it's a little dull looking, but you can knock off any rusty spots or any grime on it, and it looks a lot better. If your garage is a bit better equipped and you have something like a bench grinder with a polishing wheel on one side, you can do the exact same thing, but with less effort. That was literally 10 seconds. And it's already shiny. How good does that look? It's practically a new bolt, except for the fact that it's almost stripped out. But if you have a lot of bolts to do and no bench grinder, there's an easier way by the looks of things.
Your bike may be clean, but is it every bolt is polished clean?
Now that is basically exactly what I was doing by hand, but with a drill. So my immediate reaction would be, stop being so lazy. But in reality, depending on the shape of your bolt head and depending on how many bolts you have, this could save a lot of time and energy. Just be sure to not over tighten it and damage the threads. So I'm going to take the same approach with a bit of degreaser and let's see what it does. Keep in mind, this is a flat head bolt, so it's the easiest one to clean up nicely. Okay, I'll give credit where credit is due. That looks like a brand new bolt. It even has a shine to it. I don't know if it was because it was spinning, whereas when I do it by hand, I just move it back and forth, but it looks awesome. It also got a lot more cleaning with less effort in a shorter time than I would by hand. Another one that I'm going to remember, 9 out of 10. I'm only docking a point because you could damage your threads if you're not careful. If I saw someone going into their garage with plastic wrap and a rubber glove, I'd be pretty sure that they're a serial killer. Yet this next video uses both in a way that I'm really conflicted about. You saw that too, right? That guy was just wrapping the grips in plastic wrap. Better than I can. I've never seen anything like this before. I think it's difficult for starters. Okay, there we go, I made a plan. Have you ever seen anything like this before? I get the concept. It's to keep the grips clean after you've been working on the bike. So when you push the bike around, touch the grips, they don't get dirty. I like the idea. There's just one problem. Grips are really hardy. You just pressure wash them. You use degreaser and clean them. There's a million easy ways to clean them. And if that doesn't work, you replace them for a few bucks. It seems like a novelty, kind of pointless. 3 out of 10? But wait, there's more. Did you catch that? What he was doing while loosening the rear wheel nut? Here it is again. He uses a rubber glove between the nut and the socket so that you don't mar the nut. Now, I sort of have two concerns. For starters, I've played with this nut quite a lot and it still looks really good, but I do like the concept of trying to keep it looking as new as possible, because as you loosen and tighten nuts, they do slowly wear because there's designed to be a little bit of slop. Otherwise, this wouldn't fit on. My second concern is, will there be enough space between the socket and the nut for a glove to even fit? Okay, I think I have to take back my words, because now there's zero slop in this and it fits on the socket even better. Maybe this guy's onto something. And my socket doesn't fall off when I let go now.
However, after using this method, it didn't take long to form holes in the glove, although I did cheap out on these gloves.
I do really like that idea though, and I am going to try to remember to do that in the future, because it just takes care of your bike that little bit more. It doesn't make the job any more difficult. It's still quick, easy, it's not that expensive. I think it's worth doing. 10 out of 10. Here's a hack if you still use a map for directions, or if you just want to modernize your older bike. So that is the CHIGEE AI06, and I actually have one and I love it. It gives you all the benefits of wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, like being able to navigate with Google Maps. Then it has GPS speed, battery voltage, air temperature, and a lean angle sensor built in. This guy is even using the OBD adapter, so the device knows his bike's RPMs. And then there are optional extras like dash cams front and back, and even tire pressure monitoring. But you probably missed the coolest feature at the start of the video. Yes, the AI06 can be installed on any motorcycle, but it can also be attached to BMW's cradle. And then you can use the Wonder Wheel on the handlebars to control it. And I've been testing this hack for the last 5 months, so I know it's real. And you can get 10% off the CHIGEE AI06 by using the code CHAOS10. The longer you work on motorcycles, the lazier you get. Or, to sound a bit more strategic, you start to find shortcuts to do the job faster. For example, if you want to change your air filter, you should take your tank off, but that's a mission. So why not just take a piece of wood, a 2x4, and prop up the tank? Now you can access your airbox. At least that is what my dad taught me. But there's one problem. Now that piece of wood is in the way of your tools and the airbox and pretty much everything.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
So a bungee cord looks like it has all the benefits of a 2x4 without any of the drawbacks. So back here, there are plenty of places to hook a bungee cord, like that. But up here on the tank, that little hole there is actually too small for the hook of my bungee cord. So I've tied the shoelace from earlier through that hole, and now I think we can just hook the bungee cord onto the shoelace like that. Now I just have to take the piece of wood out, right? I don't think it's going to be strong enough, but let's start and see how much it droops before we move the bungee cord. In that position, it did nothing. Okay, attempt number 2. We're going to make the bungee cord shorter. Except now I can't get there. This isn't going well. What if we hook it down here? Well, that's dangerous. Okay, I've determined that bungee cords aren't the best solution because they sort of have a predetermined length that they're going to work at. A tie down, however, you can adjust the length of to suit your application. The downside is they have metal clips that are bound to scratch your paint. We'll deal with that later. Make it nice and short. And up we go. Damn it. And up we go. Hook it around there. Make sure we get our cloth in the way. And now we just pull this like we tie our bike down. That is way better than a bungee cord. I think I just hacked a hack. I mean, I can't take all the credit. After all, I just improved somebody else's idea. But this is brilliant. All the access, no 2x4 in the way, and the tank isn't going to land on my head when I stick it in there for no reason. But do I judge the original hack or mine? The original hack is a 4 out of 10. Mine's a 10 out of 10. Technically, there's a quick and easy button to lower it too. Now, this next hack requires a laptop. Well, actually just an internet connection, but I thought this looked more dramatic.
If you've ever bought a second-hand bike, you'll know that they hardly ever come with an owner's manual.
So I always end up trying to find one on the internet, and that can be tricky for some motorcycles. Or can it?
If you ever need a manual for your motorcycle, car, or literally anything else, try Manuals Lib. Just type in the model you're looking for and it's all there ready to download or view online. The cool thing is that you don't have to have an account or give any personal information to access the whole library, and it's entirely free to use.
If you have a sort of 10-year-old bike that was very common, you probably will never even need an owner's manual because you just type in your question into Google, like how much oil does a 2013 R1 need, and there will be about 6 different forums at least giving you the answer. And someone is bound to be right. On the flip side, I once had an old Aprilia RS125. It was a 2-stroke. It was Italian, so it probably never even came with an owner's manual. So any information I found about it on the internet, I didn't really trust. And don't get me started on the AI overview. For example, when we were replacing the frame on my Speed Triple, we simply Googled what is the torque spec of the engine mounting bolts on a Speed Triple. And it told us it was something like 35 Newton meters. I then got the correct answer from the workshop manual and it was 60 Newton meters. That is a very big difference. So don't trust the AI overview. So let's go to this Manuals Lib that this guy was talking about, try a few different bikes and see if they have manuals for it. So let's start with what we have here. A 2023 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS. It would help if I could spell that. It's not the prettiest website, but if it works, it works. Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS Owner's Handbook Manual. Master Ignition Switch. Does mine have that? This is why you should read your manual. I just learned something about my bike.
And of course, you can even download them for later.
Download easy to read. Of course I want easy to read. Does that mean it gets rid of the words and just shows me pictures like a cartoon?
I then looked for a manual for my 2016 Yamaha R1 with more success. So I tried something a bit more obscure and still succeeded in finding a manual for a 2004 Aprilia RS125. Even if it did seem a bit sparse.
Okay, so we can't blame the website if the user manual is bad. It's not their fault. But they did indeed have it. So this one is worth remembering, 10 out of 10. If your radiator has a hole in it like this one, you're screwed. But if you just have a couple of bent fins, it might be worth fixing them. It could improve your radiator's cooling ability. In the past, I have tried to fix them, but it usually ends badly. And now I think I know why. So here is the damaged radiator from my Speed Triple, which means it doesn't matter if we break it anymore. And down here, you can see a clump of damaged fins, which is actually the least of this radiator's problems. In the video, it looks like he's using 2 small flat screwdrivers, but I've also got 2 picks here because I don't know if that'll be easier or worse. And a single pick is probably what I would have used originally to try and fix these before seeing this video. So I think let's start with a normal pick and see how much damage we can do or repair. So normally I would just try to get into a gap somewhere and peel the fin back. And as a result, I'd press on the fin next to it and damage it as well. Okay, now that I've made things worse, let's try this way. So they had a screwdriver coming from each direction, which is still just as difficult.
Right away, this seemed impossible. So like all good mechanics, I blamed my tools and got a smaller screwdriver instead.
Unfortunately, I only have one really little screwdriver, so I'm going to try that with the pick because these are just too small for regular flat screwdrivers. Okay, even this tiny screwdriver is still so big that while trying to get in between the fins, I'm damaging the fin next to it. So I'm essentially just passing off the problem to the next fin. How did he make it look so easy in the video, and I can't even get one fixed properly? There's one thing I haven't tried. It did about the same thing. Or maybe it's a great hack on something like a car radiator with bigger fins. But for someone as impatient as I am, 1 out of 10. If you ever transport your bike in the back of a truck or on a trailer, you will have straps lying around. And I'm not gonna lie, when I'm done with them, they usually just go like this. Doesn't take up much space. But apparently, I could be neater.
5. Fix 2 screwdrivers onto a power drill, then hook the loop onto the screwdriver. Start the drill and spin it fast, and your rope will be neatly wound up.
The only issue I foresee is that I have a sort of clasp, not a normal hook like in the video. They seem to just magically get 2 screwdrivers in here. I don't suppose it has to be tight, but I don't want them falling out. We've made some kind of contraption. So now we just hook one here. And we should be neat and tidy within seconds, right? I think I could be a rhythmic gymnast. Okay, maybe it needs more guidance than that. This is already taking longer than the video made it seem like it should. How do I get it out of there? That's not really any neater. I mean, it is my clasp's fault, but still. Okay, let's do a race. I'm gonna try and fold it up neatly while playing that scene next to it, and we'll see which is faster. 3, 2, 1, go. This is considerably less fun, I'll be honest. Okay, time. I suspect mine was faster, and it looks a lot neater. And after all of that, I promise you I'm still gonna stall them the same way. -6 out of 10. But anyway, let me know which hack you might actually use after this video, or share a hack that you do often use down in the comments. And I'll see you on the next ride.